This is the really exciting bit is, we're now poised for that maiden first exploration campaign. We only picked these projects up in November with Nunavut, with February with Radium Point. So now our ability to get on the ground is there. Back end of this month, we'll have people starting to hit the ground at the Great Bear Lake project, slowly moving up to Nunavut. But we'll have a team on the ground.
Hello and welcome to the Assay TV. Today I'm joined by Troy Whittaker, who is the Executive Director of White Cliff Minerals, an energy metals company focused on discovering district scale and high-grade projects in Tier 1 jurisdictions. So welcome to the Assay, Troy. It's great to have you with us today.
Thank you very much.
So let's start with a brief introduction to the company and its projects.
So White Cliff, it's undergone a fair transition across the last 12 or so months. New board, new management, new projects. Certainly not the White Cliff that people would remember from 12 months ago and beyond. It's completely different. Companies now focused on large, high-grade, scalable projects, Tier 1 jurisdictions. We've now expanded our focus from Australia into Canada. And not only have we secured the large, potential high-grade and scalable in Canada, but we've managed to pick up two really exciting projects in historic and proven areas. One is the Nunavut Copper Mine Project, obviously in Nunavut, targeting copper, gold and silver there. And then you've got the Great Bear Lake Project, which some people might know as Radium Point in the Northwest Territories. Over there, we're targeting uranium, the copper, gold, silver type minerals. Australia, you'll notice, it is completely revamped. As we said, it's, White Cliff's undergone a significant transition over the last 6 to 12 months. We're down to just 4 projects in Australia, and they're sort of the pick of the bunch. We've got the Reedy South Gold Project that holds an existing JORC resource. We have just recently completed some exploratory drilling there, looking at potential extensions to the resource. Assays are pending there. Lake Ty, over in the Lake Johnson area. Everyone knows that area. It's pretty hot, especially for lithium. We're actually right next to the TG Metals project there, and just down the road from the Charge Metals and Rio Tinto JV.
Right.
The remaining 2, Demil's just north of the Nunavut project, another area of great potential. And then Bentley, which is last but not least, it's just a project in the application stage at the moment, but chasing an IOCG type mineralisation, similar to what you might have seen from the recent Rincon announcement in the West Arunta project.
All right, thanks for that. And we'll get into those projects a bit more in depth later on. But you mentioned the transformation of the company in the last couple of months. So could you tell us about the team and the team's expertise?
So I think, with the projects coming in from Northern Canada, we really needed to bring in some people with that significant frontier exploration type experience. About 12 months ago now, Rod McIlroy joined as executive chairman for the company. Rod's an Australian geologist, extensive experience, large scale projects, cold climates. Eric Sundergaard, we brought on just recently. Eric's based up there in Calgary, obviously close to these projects. Both Rod and Eric have worked in the Arctic for near on 20 years, more. So, we've now brought on that skill set with frontier exploration. And then myself, obviously new to the board as well. I've worked at all ends of the spectrum, worked for Fortescue Metals Group, worked for Anglo American. Recently, I worked for Alien Metals. So my experience sort of ranges from that, discovery of the mineral right through to building and operating it.
All right, sounds like we've got some great people on board, which is good to hear. So let's look into the news flow. So looking at Radium Point, can you talk us through some of the exploration that's being done so far here?
Radium Point, so it was discovered, I think it was about the 1900s by the Geological Survey of Canada. Mining sort of commenced in about 1932. Between 1960s and early 1980s, silver was the targeted commodity. Exploration from some of these operators was sort of guided by the fluctuating sort of metal prices. Historically, the focus was on predominantly uranium and silver. Out of this particular area, Great Bear Lake, near on 14 million pounds of uranium oxide in the 1940s. Just shy of 35 million ounces of refined silver. Then there was 11.5 million pounds of copper with gold credits. It's had a fairly, rich history of production based on fairly limited exploration. And I think one of the real points that potentially stands apart from others is it's been identified as having Canada's highest probability for hosting of iron, oxide, copper, gold, and uranium, plus silver mineralisation in the company by the State Survey. That's the Northwest Territories Geosciences Department. That's not us going out there and cherry picking something. This is what independent authority has done, and if we sort of focus on the work they potentially did as well as others, we've had grad samples again from people sort of looking at that geomapping of the area. Within that particular area, we've had Thompson, 14.5% of uranium, Bullwinkle target, 7 and a bit % uranium, and some of these uranium targets actually have been followed up due to access issues. It's only sort of in recent times some of these portable drill rigs with helicopters you can sort of plonk around the place, and if you sort of just move on to the copper and gold showings, copper, gold, and silver across the project. Again, some fairly recent stuff. Alberta Star up there just before us. One of our targets we call Spark Plug, 8 and a bit grams a ton of gold, 44 grams a ton of silver, and near on 4% copper. It's had an area which really rich in production history, with just sort of scratching the surface on the exploration side of things.
All right, so you briefly mentioned there are some of the priority targets that have been confirmed. Could you tell us more about those in preparation for the activities to begin in field?
So probably, we've identified, over 40 now. I'll probably just talk to 4 or 5 of these, or we'll be here all day. But, I think what we're seeing is, what we hope is that Olympic Dam style mineralisation, uranium, copper, gold, silver. Historical results have shown the exceptionally high grade. With our field works, we're looking to expand on that, proving up sort of district scale discoveries with, an overlap strike length. So if we start in the very north of that particular area, just to the east of the historic Sloan deposit, Sloan was about 100,000 tonnes at 8.5% copper. Immediately along that strike, we hold 7 kilometres of that extension. And we have seen some radioactive occurrences across that strike at several locations. Still sort of sitting in the north, and I spoke about Thompson before. That sits within really close proximity to Echo Bay and El Dorado, so we know we're in the right spot there. In and around that area, we've had grab samples: 15 grams a ton gold, 137 grams a ton silver. Copper and some uranium, and in certain instances potentially some cobalt and nickel thrown in for good measure. So fair polymetallic strike there. Coming sort of down from those northern targets, you've got Bullwinkle in the centre, lies on a northeast southwest trending structure. We have noted copper and uranium mineralisations. We have got hold of some historic radiometric data showing a uranium anomaly along that strike as well. So gives us something to chase. Coming, we start to move further south. We've got just next to the old Bonanza silver mine, an area called Spud Bay. And again, we've got something along strike from that, about 1.5 kilometre strike extension, trending west from that mine. And again, historical grab samples along the strike, 22% copper, 600 and bit grams a ton of silver, 11% copper. So we're still moving south, and you get right to the bottom, and this is an area that we've just sort of started to look at. We've identified a target called Love Lake. Again, really reasonable samples of copper and silver. So I think that's sort of walking from top to bottom there. But the message with all of that is, there's plenty of targets. We've identified 5, 6, 7 of these high priority ones, we have the ground. It's over 2,900 square k's. We're in the right spot, and we're only just scratching the surface with some of this stuff.
Yeah, wow, that sounds really exciting, and lots going on at Radium Point, clearly. So looking at Nunavut now, what are the updates over here and the projects over in Nunavut?
Similar to the works we're doing over at Great Bear Lake, the real focus has been on that review of digitization of the historical data and results. It was just last week we actually released our latest plans with Nunavut, highlighting the priority targets for fieldworks. Again, it's a rich history, provides us with a plethora of data as to get out there. It has been, staking began in that area, 1920s, 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Exploration sort of slowed in about 1970 due to some of the copper price fluctuations. But there has been, some modern exploration there by Tundra Copper. It was the old Kaizen. That's a fairly big discovery. Between 2013 and 2015, they were pulling out grab samples of upwards of 40%. Now they had one exploration drill hole, in and around us, 30 odd meters at just shy of 1% copper. So, it's in the right area. We've got these historical results, and since 2015, little to no work has been done in that region. So, it's got everything sitting there. The first order controls for something that sort of suggests that there's a district scale opportunity. Our Don target. In the southwestern spot, grab samples exceeding 30% of copper. It wasn't 2 or 3 grab samples; it was a lot more than that. And then Qtar, again, right down there in the southeast. I think they trenched 2.5 meters at 10% copper and 5 grams a ton of silver from composite rock chip. So again, we're in the right space.
Yeah, definitely. And you have received the remaining federal licenses, I believe. So in terms of looking forward now, what are the next steps in project advancement, and what can our investors look out for in the coming months?
So I think this is the really exciting bit is, we're now poised for that maiden first exploration campaign. We only picked these projects up in November with Nunavut, with February with Radium Point. So now our ability to get on the ground is there. Back end of this month, we'll have people starting to hit the ground at the Great Bear Lake project, slowly moving up to Nunavut. But we'll have a team on the ground. They'll be looking at all the fieldworks, rock chips, trench sampling, soil sampling, geomapping, and just as exciting as that, we'll have some helicopters arriving towards the back end of this month and into next across both targets, looking at some aerial electromagnetic type stuff. So if you look at even just the next 4, 5, 6 weeks on the ground sampling, results will start filtering back out of that, as well as the results from a helicopter. And then, within a couple of months, we'll have some drill rigs landing on the ground, which will be, starting to test some of these projects.
All right, that sounds really exciting. And thanks again so much for joining me today, Troy.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Thanks.